According to a disastrous new report, the effects of climate change are already being felt across the country. In fact, this report says that they are far reaching and will be getting worse. Findings are part of a draft version of the U.S.'s fifth national climate assessment, which Congress mandates must be compiled every 4 years. The full report will be released sometime next year, and the report is not going to be much better than what we've seen because already not good. Here's what it reads. Americans are feeling the effects of climate change in their everyday lives as intensifying extreme events strain public services and outdated infrastructure. Infrastructure that, again, is not going to be fixed for quite some time. Yes, the Biden administration actually did manage to get an infrastructure bill passed, but it is going to take years to be able to work on this, and those storms and those increased weather events, they're not going to wait. They're not going to wait for these projects to get done. Okay, there's more. As climate risks continue to increase in scale and frequency, multiple climate hazards and cascading climate impacts are disrupting essential societal systems in every part of the country. And I just want to, stress that it's not something that's happening in random countries that Americans can't find on a map. It was happening right here in the country. It's right here. It's here. And it's an incredibly expensive thing to ignore. And it's far more expensive than making the necessary changes that we need in order to mitigate this when you're looking in the long run. In the short term, it's a gigantic investment. But in the long term, it will pay off, especially when you look at the costs that will be incurred later on. So, that said, there's more. The things Americans value are at risk. Many of the harmful impacts that people across the country are already experiencing will worsen as warming increases. New risks will emerge. Now, they also link directly human activity and the release of greenhouse gas emissions to these effects. Quote, rising sea levels, melting ice caps, warmer oceans, and changing rainfall patterns, the U.S. report says, has warmed 68% faster than the planet as a whole, or about 2.5 degrees Fahrenheit in the continental U.S. above pre-industrial levels. Those figures haven't yet approached the level of warming scientists say will unleash the worst effects of climate change. They're already making extreme events like wildfires and hurricanes worse, leading to increased death and destruction in many regions of the country. Compound events, they say, combinations of weather or climate events affecting one location back-to-back or multiple locations at the same time are already occurring in every region of the country and are projected to become more frequent as the world continues to warm. These events have cascading effects through supply chains, food networks, and other interdependent systems that typically cause greater harm than isolated events. And here's another example. In the West, research suggests that conditions are drier now than they have been for the last 1,200 years, and compounded by the effects of climate change will likely persist for another decade. So these droughts, dry conditions, as they mention, wildfires, obviously forests, as well as communities being destroyed. We saw that in California. And no, it was not Jewish space lasers. But also, you have less food production. Crops will not grow in certain crops will not grow in certain environments. You also have the decline in the air, the quality that we breathe. They're kind of important because air helps. I like air. But there is an image of Lake Mead where drought conditions have led to basically the drying up just about of this lake. They're finding artifacts in it from like thousands and thousands of years ago. And if that wasn't bad enough, lakes and rivers drying up might also ironically lead to more fossil fuels. For example, usage by California, New Mexico, and Arizona could increase because hydroelectric dams, which is, again, related to Lake Mead, in fact, Lake Mead is created by the Hoover Dam, they would not be able to generate electricity. In fact, electricity generation is down about 35% because the water table is so low. And again, that is just in the West. it gets worse everywhere else. So this is grim. It's very doomer. But the report goes on to stress that there is a little bit of hopium. So let's get to that. The report is adamant that faster, deeper cuts in greenhouse gas emissions remain achievable through a rapid transition in how we produce and use energy and manage land. U.S., they point out, has actually reduced emissions by about 12% between 2007 and 2019. However, they say in order to hit these goals, they must fall by 6% each year from this point on to see the country get to net zero emissions by mid-century. So I said opium, but then I'm also going back to doomer because now, even with a Democratic Congress and a Democratic president, we still did not hit 6% reduction in carbon emissions. Now we may have a Republican House and a split Senate. Oh boy, which means even less is going to happen if I'm correct. So not good. The draft report also reads that every additional increment of warming and every action to reduce that warming matters for reducing the harmful impacts of climate change on the United States. And again, it doesn't just affect the United States, it also affects the world. Worst consequences of climate change can still be avoided, they say, or limited by large-scale actions that rapidly decarbonize the economy and prepare communities for impacts. Many options are available to reduce emissions over the next decade that also provide immediate health and economic benefits. This report is, again, more optimistic than I am. And again, I hate to go doomer on you, but that's how I feel. Sure, we can do something about this, and we even have the technology to do something about this. But is there the political will? No. I don't believe so. But I am far more, I don't want to say conservative, right? Because I'm not conservative, but when I think about like optimism, I'm not optimistic. So when it comes to like that, I'm, again, I don't really think that anything is going to happen. I don't think that we're going to make the necessary cuts in carbon emissions unless something massively drastic happens, like Republicans having nowhere near power at all. But I don't know. Unfortunately, in this country, we have one major political party that has, for the most part, been corrupted by big money and corporate interests. And then you've got the other side who are just insane. They think the other side eats babies and that, no, the real hoax is climate change. It's not real. Oh. So, like I said, it's hard not to get doomer about this, but there is hope. Somewhat.